but is there any difference when it comes to standards here in Bali, Indonesia, and compared to the ones overseas?
Well, first, Indonesia do have a high level of standards, SNI. However, I believe, and I've seen it myself, that many of the construction companies are not following them. And I think one of the biggest problems is cost. They get pushed to build as cheap as possible, as fast as possible.
They want to check firsthand, even before the villa is built, to make sure that the contractor or the architect knows what they are doing and they are doing the right thing.
Yes, I will highly recommend people to hire a project manager to help oversee the build. But it's also important that they make sure that project manager is capable of overseeing the build.
Because I've heard some horror story that what ends up happening is the project manager itself is being bribed by the contractor.
Exactly.
Damn.
So you get these stories that you're basically not doing the job, or they're sending out a junior, or there could be many different reasons. So it's you hire one, but make sure he's experienced, capable of doing it, and can speak up. Because speak up means he could go to site and stop somebody.
Yes.
And you have that authority to say, this is wrong, you got to stop.
This is a podcast with Peter Jensen, co-founder of Bali Home Fix, one of the largest and most respected companies specializing in property maintenance, renovation, and construction in Bali. In this episode, we dive into the key nuances and challenges of building and maintaining properties on the island. Peter shares insights on construction quality, sustainable building practices, and the importance of thoughtful renovation and interior design to enhance both functionality and aesthetics. We also explore how Bali Home Fix approaches property development with a focus on long-term durability and environmental responsibility, helping homeowners avoid common pitfalls in tropical environments. Hello everyone, welcome back to Betterplace Podcast. Today we are going to dive into the world of real estate investment, and we're going to talk about the tips, insights, and also strategies to help all of you succeed. Today we're going to dive into construction's insights. We're going to talk about challenges, solutions, and best practices for homeowners, property investors, as well as developers. And here with me we have Peter from Bali Home Fix. Yes.
Thank you.
We're going to talk a lot about constructions and what you're doing in your practice day to day in Bali. And of course, we also have Sadhu from Betterplace. How are you?
Pretty good, as always. Yeah.
Okay.
A little bit wet because of the rain, but all good.
That is true. Yeah, so Bali is a tropical island, as we all know. So that means we're faced with challenges such as, direct sunlight, we have humidity, and pest problems that could lead to, a thing or two with buildings problems in Bali. But most of all, within the last 5 to 7 years, we are faced with one of the strongest rain seasons that's been happening here. So that means a lot of us might have to face leaking problems. Now, Peter, do you remember, ever since you start practicing in Bali, how many calls do you get in a day that comes in contact with leaking problems in buildings in Bali?
At the moment, we probably get 2 in average.
2 in average?
Yeah, because it's not every day it rains heavily. But it rains, but we probably get around 2, which is a serious problem.
Yes.
So we call them emergency calls, where we have to kind of react fast and try to help stop a leak.
Yeah, and you have to come right away, right after the call usually?
Many times, yes. They send a video, water, simple flying through the roof, through the ceiling. So we try to come out as fast as possible.
Okay, so that's a lot of things.
2 in a day?
2 in a day,
yeah.
Wow, okay.
When it rains heavily. Yeah.
That's plenty, yeah.
Well, there are lots of rain and there are lots of properties here.
Yeah,
And
you have a lot of job to do.
there's some serious. It's not all there emergency call, of course, but there are a lot of leaks at the moment. Yeah.
Okay. But I think let's go back a little bit. We're going to talk about Home Fix first. Just out of curiosity, when did you start to do this home fixing in Bali, and what actually brings you here in the first place?
Wow. What brings us here? Let's start with that. My wife, Haley, is an interior designer, and we used to work in Dubai for 10 years. And Dubai brought us to China, because we have a company in China, Hong Kong also. And then COVID sort of came into the picture, and we had to move back to the UK for a short time. And we have some very good friends that have opened up a company in Bali, an architect and design company. And they were sort of telling us to come over to Bali. There are lots of potential. And we decided to come over, so we stayed for 4 months and had a lot of meetings, spoke to a lot of people, lived in different areas, and decided this could be the place for us. And then we decided to open up we thought it was going to be a small little company, and eventually we should do our own small little project. However, that changed quite fast, and yeah, we are growing quite fast as a company. We're growing extremely fast at the moment.
And how many people are within your company now?
We are close to 70 full-time employees, and that's within. We opened in February next year. The company is 2 years old on paper, but we have our first project in July 2023.
Okay.
So we only done project for 1.5 years, basically.
Do you remember what was your first project?
It was a small paint job.
Okay.
But
and
yeah.
Since then, you're starting to get more jobs, and it keeps on coming.
Yeah, of course. We have lots of projects where we have small small repairs. Then we're moving into renovation, and it could be anything from 1 week to 10 months. We have a very large villa we are renovating, which is almost a year project. And anything in between. And then also we had just started to do complete design and build. So we're going to build our first villa for a client up in Ubud, but we're going to design it first.
Okay, so you're doing something from scratch as well.
Exactly, that's the next step we are moving into. Again, that was something that came. We got lots of inquiries of people asking us, could we perhaps look into this? And I kept saying no, due to the fact that we needed to have the back office team in place. We need to have engineer in place, architect, designers, proper site team, supervision, which we now have, and then we are ready to take that next step.
So you said that you are building your own team from the inside to make sure that you are doing a proper job. But do you have like a certain standard that you apply to all of your projects, be it small or big ones?
We try. As everybody with a little experience in Bali know, this is a difficult subject.
Yeah.
2 gangs, Indonesian workers, do have a different skill set, standard, exactly that, where we are coming from. So it's a lot about supervision. So we have different layers of supervision. So we have foreman, mandor, project coordinator, and then on top of that we have a senior project manager, which are from New Zealand. So it's about managing and supervise the workers itself, and that way try to lift the quality, and also we try to do some training and try to improve the 2 gang skills as well. It's a difficult process, but we're slowly getting there.
Okay. So Peter, could you share with us what is your typical clients? Should it be homeowners or developers, or like a general property owners that have a quite number of villas to manage?
It's a big mix actually. We have Indonesian clients, we have expat clients, which most of them are obviously leasehold. So they have leased the villa and obviously live in Bali full time. We also have investors which have purchased new villas, and we then been called in to help fix some issues or maintenance, etc. So it's a very broad mix of clients actually.
Okay, but you keep the same standard to all of your clients?
That's what we try to do. I mean, standard for us is important. Supervision, as I said, is extremely important. And the third one is as much important as everything else, is communication. We try to set up a high level of communication to our client. So we set up WhatsApp, group chat, etc., and showing photo, video, daily report on what's going on, what we are planning to do tomorrow, etc.
Okay. And maybe Sadhu can help also with this one because you dealt with a lot of villa owners, property owners. What kind of problems are you dealing with when it comes to, building maintenance or expectations from your clients?
For me personally, we love selling off-plan villas just because when they are completed, they have that 1-year retainer. That would help us a lot to see in terms of like this, the rainy season. If there are leaks, they change it and everything like that. But if it's completed villas, we end up having to, handle the complaints, number 1. 2, talk with the previous owner. Perhaps they already have a previous project manager or a tukang that currently still retain some maintenance. But basically, we help find another company or perhaps talked about helping the maintenance ourselves if it's under our management, which will be handled as well. But if it's not handled by us, we would always try to find another company that can help, like Bali Home Fix itself.
One of them.
I actually would love a little bit of a question. I saw your website, right? There's a page where you try to figure out if the client is looking for an easy fix or looking for a value for money kind of thing. Because we handle the same problem sometimes. People just, it's too expensive, but I want it to be lasting, fix. How would you handle that complaint?
Well, it's not really a complaint. It's a question.
Yes.
And I always try to make not a case out of it, but I always try to explain a new client. I always tell them that we are not the cheapest. And if you're just after the cheapest tugan price, then you should find some local tugans and then try those. However, we come with a different setup, and I explain the setup with different layer of supervision. And we try to level up the quality. Plus, on all repairs, we also provide a 3 months warranty of the work we do, which help in many times. So we are more expensive. However, there's a reason for that. And sometimes we quote and we get told if we are way too expensive, and that's okay. Few times that same client had come back later on, had a bad experience, and admitted they should have gone with our quote to start with. And then we fixed it.
And it ended up being more expensive having gone through those experience.
Correct.
I see. But what are the type of problems that usually you take as your project, other than leakage or paint work?
There's a main problem in Bali, which is mold issues, moisture issues. And that comes due to the way of construction. Bali is full of water. Rain season is one, but there are also many villas are built on rice paddies, so there's water below. And if you don't apply good enough waterproofing, protecting your walls, your flooring, then water comes up. And water comes up, we call it rising damp, and it comes into the walls and they create mold. So that's from the bottom up. But then you have the problem on many villas have flat roof. And if the application for waterproofing is not good enough, then after a very short time, water will start coming in, and then it will come from top and low. And then you have a lot of, you have leaks into your ceiling, but that then create mold, and you have smells, and that creates, for some people, I mean, it could be, people can get sick of if it's too strong. We have come out by completely black, or green, you have to scrape it off. So it could be very serious. That is number one problem.
Mold.
Yes, and then number two, I would say, is MEP. MEP is mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, especially on the electrical part. The way many Tugans applying their electrical skills is very different to what we are used to from Europe, and that is a completely different subject we could talk about for a long time. However, that is the main issue here. the way it's put together.
Okay, so let's talk about the molding first, because the problem starts when you do not prep the building correctly. It can go from the bottom up or go through the roof. So let's say the problem is the ones that goes from bottom up. The water is rising and then the mold starting to form up in the walls, and they started to go up to the ceiling as well. What can you do to fix that kind of problems?
Apply a quality waterproofing membrane. It's not rocket science, it's just savings. That's probably the main two savings for the developer's point of view or the contractor, and maybe also training and knowledge how to apply correctly.
So you're applying it to the walls?
First and foremost, you're applying to the floor before you start building your walls up, because that stops the rising damp coming through. Yeah,
so what I'm saying is that, let's say the building is already built, they've been going for 2-3 years, so the walls are already there, but they're having this kind of problems and they come to you. I have this problem with molds, I don't know what to do. The water is going inside the walls already. Do you have any specific solutions for that?
Yes, so we have a special equipment. We have a thermal camera. We have a moisture meter, so we can find out if there are leaks, first and foremost, if there is a pipe inside the wall, or it is rising damp. So first, we try to find out what exactly is the problem of why the mold is here. If it's close to a bathroom, most likely it's leaks. If it's in a living room where there are no water close by, it's more likely rising damp. Then we also try to find out how can we stop that. So there are a company in Bali that can do injections, for example, in the wall, in the bottom. So every 20 centimeter, we inject into it's a liquid, you could call it a membrane.
Okay.
It goes in and sort of stop the water to rise. So that's one option. Second option, to apply a membrane yourself on the wall to stop mold coming through, because sometimes it's also coming from the outside. If you have, for example, a lot of water come down on your roof, and all the water, there's no gutter system, there are no drainage, all the water comes down and it sits outside, and obviously comes through your wall outside, your foundation, and that way it comes in. So sometimes we have come out and we are installing a storm pipe drainage around the villa to try to lead the water away. And also apply a gutter to your roof if there is not. So there are different ways to try to prevent a potential mold problem later on.
Okay.
What about that quick fix of the tiling of the wall? Would you recommend that? So let's say there's this particular wall that is always getting mold and everything like that. They scrape up the paint and they just put tiles.
That doesn't stop the problem.
Yeah, it's just a cosmetic fix. But will it last?
Probably not. Not for a long time, because if mold starts or moisture start coming from behind the wall into the adhesive that have been used to fix the tiles, eventually it will start come through.
Right.
And a sign for that, if for example you in the corner where you have tiles, you start going a little bit white, or where the grout is, if the grout start changing color, there's a sign of water coming through from behind. And if you have floor, it goes, it's almost like salt coming up. So you can see that different color in your floor. If you have a concrete floor, polished concrete, or you have tiles, again, you can see in the corner of the tiles, it's clear why, and it's basically rising damp coming through. So the signs are there, and obviously when it comes through the floor, and you have a large living room or whatever, it's obviously a big issue, because you got to take the floor up, apply a waterproof membrane, and then put new floor down. This is obviously costly.
Yes.
Clearly.
And all that cost is thanks to the unwise planning of the building in the first place.
Correct.
Yeah. So when it comes to building and constructions in Bali, I'm not going to talk about the ones that are done by the tukang, without the contractor, without anything. But let's talk about Balinese contractor workers, because they must have a certain standard as well. But is there any difference when it comes to standards here in Bali, Indonesia, and compared to the ones overseas?
Well, first, Indonesia do have a high level of standards, SNI, However, I believe, and I've seen it myself, that many of the construction companies are not following them. And I think one of the biggest problem is cost. They get pushed to build as cheap as possible, as fast as possible. And that obviously create issues doing the construction, because there are things they will do to save money. And waterproof is many times one of those, and gutter or drainage, what have you. So many things comes actually from, I would say, from the developer side. They're pushing the construction companies to build to cheap as possible, basically. I will say there are some developer that are building a very good quality, so it's not all of them. Unfortunately, we only get called out to the bad ones. We obviously nobody's calling us to see the good ones. But I have seen them, and they are here. So it's not sort of a picture of everybody doing that. There are a lot that are doing the wrong part, I would say. So there's another thing that is quite interesting to see, because if you see some of the developers marketing, where I've seen some saying we are following European standard. And I always think it's a little bit questionable, because which Europe which Europe country are you actually following? Because there is no such thing European standard. There are British standard, there are German standard. So each country have their own standard, like Indonesian have a standard. So you can't just say we're following European standard. Makes no sense to anybody. So standard is a set of code you're following. And they are definitely not being used in Bali. That's a fact. Of many projects.
Okay. And as you are now practicing in Bali, I'm sure you are also following the SNI, Standard Indonesian. And do you also add your own? I mean, what the usual case was when I see the construction sites in Bali, of course, from the simple things like the workers doesn't even wear the helmet and everything. And when it comes to plumbing, electrical, sometimes they don't have a blueprint that can be given to the homeowners or the developers, in which case it would create some problems, because if something happened in the future, they don't know the plan at all. But other than that, what do you see when it comes to the mistake in the construction section here in Bali, Indonesia?
What do I see as a problem? Yes. Wow, I mean, where to start? I mean, it, as I said just before, right? They start with the developer, and it start with the cost and how much the developer are willing to invest in quality, and follow standards. So a cost be put down to the construction company, which is a typical an Indonesian company, and they will move on to site and they will follow a set of drawings, which many times are very little detailed. I've seen many drawings with very little details on, meaning you're leaving lots of that responsibility to the contractor to basically choose what they're going to do. And then again, it comes down, and I have to say that because it comes down again to cost. They are trying to do it as cheap as possible so they can make a higher profit. So it's that sort of balance, because nobody is checking. There's no sort of an inspector from Balinese government that comes out and check, have all this been followed? Can we take this off? Can we take this off? It just get built, and it's there for everybody to see afterward, the potential issues. And I personally get called out from mostly expat that want to buy a new villa. And they sort of call me out to help them do an inspection, to check the villa's quality before they pay the last money, or sometimes they also do it before. Ask if I can help them with tech drawings. Is this a serious developer? Is he, so forth. And quite often we see problem in that phase already. So I give you an example. We were on site. I asked the architect, can you please explain to me how are you going to apply waterproof in this, on your roof, in your bathrooms, in your floor? What is your plan? And because I cannot see anything on the drawings. God honest true, he couldn't answer my question.
No way.
And he was the architect. So that tells you the problem and the issues you're facing. And So is it a problem within the architect itself? They're trying to cut down. Is it the construction company or also the developer? So it's sort of a mix on who takes this responsibility. But it's an issue, for sure.
Yes.
It's a big issue in Bali.
Yeah, I can see what you're trying to say. And Sadhu, you're seeing this from the perspective of Betterplace that also works as a consultant, because you also give, inputs to potential clients when they first want to build their own villa or to pick which one they want to buy. Now, Peter talked about the problem is sometimes there are no people inspecting at the site. So the workers just do whatever they're told to do, but at the end of the day, no one is really checking the quality, how it's supposed to be built the way it is. But from your perspective, have you ever faced where, the client wants to check for themselves when the villa is built? They want to check firsthand even before the villa is built to make sure that the contractor or the architect knows what they are doing and they are doing the right thing.
Yes. Moving back to around 3 years ago, I had this client who was purchasing an off-plan villa back in Tumbak Bayu, right? The villa was, at that time, still COVID pricing, but way too cheap, to be honest with you. It was 700 million Indonesian rupiah, townhouse, one small private pool, 700 mil for 30 years lease. So
how much?
30 years, 700 million.
700
Indonesian
million.
rupiah.
Okay,
so that's
wow.
about what? Less than 60,000? Oh.
Yeah.
Well, my math is not that great, but basically way too cheap, right?
Yeah.
So I recommend them. You know what? If you're worried about this, since the contract is the leasehold signing and the construction agreement, right? You have the right to have your own project manager. Basically, you hire an external party on your behalf to check about the progress and if the construction agreement is met. Turns out that's where the margin is. You are right about how the contractor tries to push down the pricing.
Yeah.
Not the pricing, the cost. Some of the project manager, turns out when she investigates the property, there is, when, I'm not the technical guy, basically there should be 7 millimeter thick of steel. They end up using it for the 3. Is that part of the way that they can save costs? Is that true?
Yeah, of
course.
Saving down the construction and lowering down the quality, even though they already signed the agreement that this should be used for this particular property. Yeah. So do you recommend using a project manager as well, like that? Or perhaps is that one of your services as well?
We also offer that, we have said yes to a few projects. We don't do it just for everybody, but we have said yes to a couple of projects. Yeah. But yes, I will highly recommend people to hire a project manager to help oversee the build.
Yeah.
But it's also important that they make sure that project manager is capable of overseeing the build.
Because I've heard some horror story that what ends up happening is the project manager itself is being bribed by the contractor.
Exactly.
Damn.
So you get these stories that you're basically not doing the job, or they're sending out a junior, or there could be many different reasons. So it's you hire one, but make sure he's experienced, capable of doing it, and can speak up. Because speak up means he could go to site and stop somebody.
Yes.
And you have that authority to say, this is wrong, you got to stop. And some don't have that. Let's just put it that. So, and again, it comes down to cost, because you can hire a very cheap project manager, a local, and then there are very good local project manager, absolutely. But you get what you pay for, I would say. So if you have a local project manager that have 3 years experience, or you hire one that have 20 years experience, obviously a huge difference. So.
Yeah.
Okay. And you mentioned about the building when it comes to the COVID era. Yeah. So that's quite interesting, because during COVID, the price of buildings and real estate in general was going downhill, right? It was an extreme. But then we started to recover, and all of a sudden, there's like this huge wave of building industry happening in Bali, from Canggu going to Tabanan area, and then Pecatu, Uluwatu, all the way to Bukit. Suddenly everybody just starts building their own villas or restaurant or something. But do you notice if the quality before and after COVID is going up or declining?
I can only see the older villa. Many of the older villa is actually slightly better quality of the new villas. I have to say again, we only see the bad villas because they're the one that we get called out to.
That's true.
So again, but we're also renovating many of the older villas, and they're 10 years old, 15 years old, and some of them are really solid. They just need an upgrade or changes, whatever the client wants. But I do see the new villas that are coming now are being built fast, cheap budget, and that obviously gives you a result of bad quality. And I think also a subject that have not been mentioned, but the warranty of many of the construction company, which is, I think, is a major problem here. I hear all from 3 months to 12 months.
Okay.
Very few give you 2 years or 3 years. But if you are a construction company and you're only willing to give 3 months to 6 months, to me, that tells me everything about that company.
Yeah.
Because they don't even believe their own project, their own quality can last more than 6 months.
Yes, that is correct.
So there is another aspect of the problems lying there.
So from where you're from, you're Denmark, right?
Yes.
What was the normal time for a warranty in construction?
In Denmark?
Yes.
Oh God, we're talking 5 years.
Wow.
10 years, well, 20 years of structural, completely different. But we also have a very high set of standard you have to follow. Construction, there'll be building instructor coming out and check your property before they get approved.
Yeah.
You have to have all your permits and drawings approved before you can start. So there's a whole set of rules which are very strict, which obviously gives you a higher quality, also a different cost. You know, we have to remember also to build in Bali is extremely cheap.
Yeah, but it comes with a price.
It comes with a price
Later on.
Yeah.
Yes, that is true.
Yeah.
So let's get back a little bit to the regulations for building in Bali. We are talking, there are some terms that I'm not familiar with, so maybe you can give me a light on it. Are you familiar with PBG?
Yes.
And SLF?
Yes.
Yes, maybe you could tell us a little bit about it.
So PBG is basically is the building permit.
Okay.
So you are, as a landowner, leaseholder, developer, whoever buys the land and wishes to build a property, have to apply for building permit.
Yeah.
And that's universal. Every country have that rules. And it's also here in Bali, Indonesia. So you have your building permit, you apply for it. It could take 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, depending on various issues. But you have to submit your application with your drawings, plans of land layout, lease, etc. So they will then process with the certificate, which will give you a building permit.
Yeah.
The SLF is a certificate of the use of the property. So, for example, you have a residential, you live there privately, or it's a rental, like Betterplace, or hotel, or cafe, whichever it might be. So that shows you the use of the property, which is as important as the PBG. Before, there were it called IMB, so they changed it now to these two certificates. So now you have to have two, before you only have one.
Oh, okay. But if the second one, the SLF, is only if you're doing something for public use?
No.
I'm guessing for houses
all
as well?
properties have to have an SLF.
Oh,
all
okay.
properties. It tells, the certificate tells you what the property can be used for. Commercial, villa, private villa, to residential, rental business, cafe, whatever it might be. So that is an important certificate you have to apply for when the construction is come to an end.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
You then apply for the certificate for the use of the property.
Have you done this process?
Well, we don't do it ourselves, but we're using agents. There are agents in Bali that do that process.
Okay. Have you tried?
Oh, luckily as an agent, we don't do those, but we do have some networks that can help in terms of the SLF and PPG. But most of those will already be handled by the developers as well, right? Because we filter the developers that make sure everything is up to par for registration and zoning license and everything like that as well.
And that's important with the SLF, because that checks the zoning.
Exactly.
If they are allowed to use the property
for the particular purposes, yes.
I have a question to you actually on that part, because if you take over a new villa for the villa management, what certificate do you need to be able legally to rent the villas out?
To be legally, we have to have the, what is it called? The tourist, what is it called? Pondok Wisata, right? The Pondok Wisata licenses. Basically, it's a touristic zone of where the particular property is located. That's one of the most important legally. But as a property management, we do our best in terms of finding the properties that we can manage legally, like those.
Okay, because as I understand, a villa management company cannot rent out a property unless it has the building permit in place. The SLF can come later.
Yes.
It can be on the process. Let's say a developer has built 10 villas and there are 10 different owners. And as soon as this property is finished, completed, they obviously want to get on the market and they hire a villa management company like yourself. But for you legally to be able to rent these villas out on behalf of this owner, you have to have this permit in place. So if there is no building permit, you legally are not allowed to rent the villa out.
Yes, if there is no building permit, especially if it's in a green zone, it's completely illegal to have it.
Because that's another issue in Bali, for example.
Yeah.
Many villas that have been built, they don't have the permit in place.
Yeah.
We have a client that have just purchased a very expensive villa, $600,000+ US.
And it turns out?
And there was no PPG or SLF.
Wow.
Okay.
They're not even applied for.
Now, I'm not sure
So
if
that
we
gives you a completely different scale of problem.
Yeah, but can we, I'm not sure, with the PPG, I don't think we can resolve that one because it's already built, but with the SLF, can we apply it later on?
SLF, you can apply later. By law, as I understand it, you basically have to have your building permit in place before you can start construction.
Yeah.
Yes.
I understand the Balinese government are flexible on that part. So if you have issued your application, so you are applying for the permit, you are allowed to start. I don't know if this is legally correct, but I know a lot of developers do that.
Yeah.
The problem is the one that finished the project and still don't have the PPG in place. Basically, you have to hand over a property to a new owner without the building permit in place. It's a big issue.
The big issue.
It is.
Yes.
Because villa management company are not allowed to rent them out, meaning they're losing income,
Yeah.
and then there is a big issue.
Yes.
They can try to manage it themselves, but if the local authority starts knocking, still another problem that they can.
I mean, there are a lot of stories.
Yeah.
Let's not go into those.
No.
But there are a lot of stories how this works and how people get around that. But it's not something I would recommend anybody to do.
No.
Indonesia, like everybody else in the world, you need a building permit to be able to build. It's quite simple, actually.
I think the problem is that whether or not people are following the actual regulations to get the building permit.
That's great. There seems so always to be a way around things.
Yeah.
To speed up. I understand the building permit process can be long and developers losing money to wait for that. So they start, suppose fair enough to a certain degree, but you still need to have the permit in place to be able to sell that villa on
Yeah.
to somebody else.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that property you mentioned, 1 million USD,
Like 600,000.
600,000 USD, already completed. Once it's the handover, there's no SLF.
There was no PBG and there was no SLF. We helped the owner to do an inspection, and one of the questions I asked if I could see the permit, the PBG and the SLF, and we were told by the developer that it was part in the contract. It was part of the new owner's responsibility to achieve.
What?
So I said, what? How can you even ask a new buyer that don't even live in the country, he's an investor, to have to apply for a building permit?
Wow.
Well, yeah, that's what he was told.
And I believe that's not the only case happening.
There are many. Many of these problems. And that is very, very important that people do their due diligence before they buy anything.
Correct.
Yeah, and there's also this new announcement from the government. It's called Building Moratorium. Are you familiar with that? Could you tell us more about it?
Well, I don't know that much other than the government have considered stopping some development in some areas, with Canggu, Binging, Uluwatu, where there is very popular, and a lot of property have been built in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And it's get overcrowded in some area. The infrastructure cannot follow. There are huge water problems. So there are a lot of problems following the development of new properties, and that need to sort of keep up. And then the government considering putting a temporary ban of building new development in these areas. Will it happen? I don't know. Is it good or bad? Time will tell.
But
I think it's
from your
good,
perspective,
but
what do you think?
I think it's good, but not in this perspective of I'm against development. I'm pro in selling properties that is already completed. That's number one, because I have a lot of supply for that. That's one. Personal stuff. Basically, for the completed villas, one, it's easier to push because we can see it. Two, well, it's nice to have something that is completed, and once they hand over the key to the property management Betterplace, we can run it as a daily rental straight away, and they can a lot less hassle, meaning that they don't have to wait for next year to come up, to come back to Bali to see the property, to check the stages and everything like that, and then hand over the key to the property management. But if it's completed, do the property maintenance check with Bali Home Fix, and then once it's everything approved by the property, hand over the key to us, and a lot less hassle, to be honest with you. But in terms of the moratorium itself, yes, it's a big minus side on the economy of development of Bali. But for me, I like selling completed villas right now, because I see that because of this law, completed villas have the possibility to appreciate a little bit in the pricing now.
Yeah. And I think we already have completed villa. I mean, a lot of completed villa that is not used for now. You know, people just try to invest in Bali, and there are still so many properties, you know, just laying there with no one's living in there. It's not rented out. So I think, I don't know. I cannot pick sides on this one. So you already picked your side. How about you? What do you think?
Well, I also like the development. Obviously, more development coming, more work for a company like us. So obviously, in that part, yes. But I do think that the infrastructure need to follow.
Yes.
If the infrastructure not following, we will face huge problems.
Yeah.
Traffic is one, water is number two, electricity is number three, and the waste is also. So we gotta get, the government need to get this part to match this development. If they can do that, please carry on, build as much as people, as the demand says. I'm okay with that, but we're creating this problem in these two areas, which is the one that's been mentioned, and that's probably also the reason why they're considering put a temporary ban on. If you drive down to Binging, Uluwatu, I mean, there are new property everywhere. New project everywhere. I mean, they're literally in the corner.
It terrifies me because the water supply there is really hard, right?
Yeah, they don't have water supply.
Yeah,
you don't have.
Because you used to live there.
You can't have a well because it's obviously rock.
Yeah.
That means you have to connect to the PDM, so the mains, the government.
And it's not reliable.
That's not reliable. Then you need to build in huge water tanks.
Yeah.
Expensive.
It's expensive, and then you have to buy water.
Every week.
And this water you're buying is maybe not the best water.
Yeah.
Meaning you then have to
Filter.
install
You
a
have to
filter
filter.
system. So the costs sort of carry on top of that. Well, yeah, that's the problem that's down there.
Wow, that is a lot. I was just thinking when I was still living in Pachatu, in the Bukit, there was this once occurrence where the water from the PDAM stopped, and because they have a leakage in their pipes, and we don't have any water for 7 days straight.
Wow.
So everyone was booking all the water tanks, and the water quality is horrible, and the price
Skyrockets,
was incredibly, really high. So yeah, I'm really, for those of you building in those area, I think we really need to plan a little bit better, because not only with the water, but also if you see in Bukit Bingin is already almost full, so they are expanding towards the, they're going back a little bit. It's not jungle. What is it called? There are so many trees, but
I
it's dry.
get what you mean, because Canggu used to be that little small plot. Now it's getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
I think it would be the same as Bingin.
Yeah.
People keep thinking, oh, this is the next Bingin, expanding a little
they're
bit.
just
like Ubud as
expanding,
well.
but there are no roads or streets built anywhere near it.
Oh.
So people are just building villas, wherever they
Wow.
think they could build. There are no roads or whatever. Electricity, they're just planning it new with no plans from the government. So I think that would be quite a nightmare within the next years.
I mean, it's a problem already.
Yes.
It is already, yeah.
So it is. I mean, we also have to remember, investors don't just build. They have to buy the land first. And the Balinese people are willing to sell the land. So it is very much connected, right? So the investors, the Balinese people are willing to sell their land, and then it get built everywhere down there. So got to be careful just saying there's too much investment going on.
Yeah.
Because the land is also for sale.
And that is what's actually sad about this island, because I think around a few times before this, we have an increase in land tax. And so I go to the place to pay for the tax, find out it already increased, and there's this other bapak behind me, a Balinese guy. He comes rushed in, very emotional. He complained about why the tax suddenly go up, and he just basically told them that he could not afford to pay the tax, and because it was a lot. I think it was for him it was a lot, and he could not pay it because he only worked as a farmer. But then the ones working, they just told, Bapak, do you know how much this land that you own, how much does it priced in the market? And no, I don't, because he has like 10 hours or something. And when the guy told Bapak how much the land that he owns is valued, he was shocked because it's actually really, really high. Okay, but at the same time, he could not afford to pay for the tax because he doesn't have a decent job. So the only way that he could pay for the tax is to sell a part of his land. And I think that happens with a lot of Balinese families that living on this island, especially in the Bukit area, because before the Bukit is quite cheap in price. So they always thought that they don't have money and they also don't have a decent job to pay for the tax for the land. And I think that is one of the reasons why people are willing to just sell their land, even if the price is not high enough. And it's the irony of the island.
True. Land prices have gone up. You probably know this better than me, but the last 3-4 years is probably double or triple in some area, maybe even more, 10 times in some areas.
It's a little bit funny, isn't it? Meaning that Bingin, technically, the land itself should not have been so expensive because it's not an arable land. Right? it's kapur. What's kapur in English?
Not sure.
Limestone land, right? You can't technically grow anything out of that. Now, in the Kintamani side or in the where my village is, it's where it's arable agriculture and everything like that. That's where the cheapest land are right now.
Yeah.
Things change, I guess.
Of course. When there's a demand, price goes up.
Yeah.
That was the first part, and there's more to come. The second part arrives next week. Here's a glimpse of what's ahead. What are the things that possible buyers or homeowners should look for when they consider in buying a new property?
Due diligence is number one that people have to consider. You gotta make sure you check out the developer. You get the right legal people to help you.
Right now, the short-term rental market is very competitive, right? Thousands of new properties are coming in every year in Bali Island alone.
Good.
My advice is to contact us.
Well, we can help. We can obviously we can help. We're here for general talk.
Yes.
Promote ourselves, but of course we are here to help.
We're here to help.